These are my mods to the original Professor Boots mini dump. We'll take a look at them one by one. The first one is the dump bed, and we'll look at the bed itself, and you'll see that I tried to make a little cleaner finish for the top of the dump bed. You can see the difference here between my mod on the right. In the original STL, there was also a hole that wasn't all the way through, which I fixed in my STL. That hole's right here. And it was difficult to get to the screws to attach them to the threaded rod, so I just made cutouts so you could get your screwdriver from either side and access those screws. For the lettering, I don't have an AMS, so I provide you with these individual letters. If you wish to print them in a different color, you can glue them in. It took me about 3 attempts to get the right sizes, but they seem to fit fairly well. For the hubs and the rear axle, I just increased the size or the depth that they go in, so I increased that square piece there. On these hubs, I increased that dent about twice as high as it used to be, because when I put this originally in, it would slide inside my TPU tires. Now with that piece a little higher, it grabs the inside recess of the tires much better, and there's no slippage at all. For the bumper, I changed where the D-ring's attached so that the D-ring could actually pivot. So I used an M2x12 screw. I modified the D-ring so you can actually thread them in and through the bumper, and you'll see that the D-ring will actually pivot up and down. If you wish to use the D-ring to actually pull something, you can. This accepts 10 by 2.7 magnets as closures for the hood. You probably should glue those in for magnets in the hood and in the body, and that is a strong connection. I also have a custom PCB, but this accepts the regular Professor Boots PCB. And one of the differences in mine is I don't have connectors. I found that the cheap AliExpress connectors weren't very good, so I solder my connectors into JST connectors like this that come apart. There was a recess at the back for the rear motor. It was only 10 millimeters deep, and it needed to be 12 to really be flush. So I just made that a little deeper, and I made the cover extend over. When I first made my first model, if I screwed the cover down, I could actually stall the motor because it wasn't down far enough. So I modified that section, and the cover has now another screw to secure it at the end. My board uses a power switch model, electronic switch, to be able to turn itself on and off. It's a Pololu 2808, and it can use a remote switch, so you basically just plug in the battery, everything's powered up, but this little remote switch will trigger the power switch, and you can use a square 6mm or a round 6mm switch. There's a place on the board to wire that in, and you can control it from the ESP32 to turn it off and on. Now, I also had a problem with my little nylon LED holders. Mine were fairly short. You can see that distance from the right hand side to the flange, and so I had to cut that back a little, but I provide 2 different hoods, one with the original Professor Boots nylon LEDs, which I couldn't get, and the ones from AliExpress, which are a little shorter. This just shows how I connected the LEDs in parallel. I have 4 white LEDs in parallel to a single resistor. I provide 3 of these if you wish. One's blank, one's Professor Boots. That's my own little logo. But in the back, the screws wouldn't recess properly. I just made that a little larger, about 6.5 millimeters. So it is a little more flush. It helps the hood open a little easier. I found that my threaded rod bound a little bit, so I made this opening a little larger. So the cover is just modified a little bit to allow a little larger opener. And my last change here is just to add a grub screw to the large cog at the rear, and that allows you to secure it a little better to the shaft. So those are my mods of the Professor Boots mini dump model.